beneficiaries' property. Now, which checks are actually in place to ensure that this exercise is not actually abused by politicians who are trying to buy votes?
Kwangu Ngakwami, if you allow me to start by just saying
Yes,
who we
please.
are. So we are a trust. We're a private entity, but we are also part public. So we have a PPE agreement with the government. And our role is to basically be the bridge between government and the private sector. So why it was seen fit to have an organization such as Kwangu Ngakwami as a bridge between government and private sector was actually the issue of fundraising for infrastructure development. So as Kwangu, we have an excellent relationship with the private sector. We are partly private sector. Our board of trustees are all big names in the private sector. They've got good track records, etc., etc. So when it was seen there was a need for the infrastructure and the money was a bit difficult to raise, it was decided that a private entity should do it with the support of government, but also with a track record in the private sector.
So now let's talk about the system being subject to abuse. Is there anything of that sort that happens with it?
There is nothing of the sort that happens with the system. I'm actually trying to understand what kind of abuse you mean. But we have very strict systems. We're regimented at Kwangu, and we work very closely with the deeds office, and we have a digitized system through which we produce the title deeds. And as I indicated to you a bit earlier, we are very strict on data sanitization, checking the beneficiary, and working closely with the local authorities. So there is almost like a checks and balances between deeds office, local authorities, and the trust as a private organization.
So I'm assuming now that this process also helps deal with the issues of double allocations and some land barons who are hoarding onto land and giving the same piece of land to different people and parceling out their stands and banking the money.
As Kwangu, what we do is we work with absolutely verified data. So we've seen in certain areas that there are double allocations of certain stands, so we cannot proceed to issue a title deed where there are double allocations or where there are disputes concerning any piece of land or property. So we make sure that the properties are 100% owned by the beneficiary that we've been given, and that there are no disputes around that property. Only then do we proceed to issue the title deeds.
How long does it take for that process to really happen, from the verification up until the issuance of the title deed to the person who's supposed to get it?
It actually depends on what data is available from the local authority. They are the ones that are the custodians of that data. So when we go in, we actually go in and access the personal data of the beneficiaries from the council records. So depending on the state of that data, the times vary on how long it takes to verify. But what we then saw was a necessary development as we were progressing with the work, because remember, for us, it's also a learning curve. It's a never done before program. We're also new at it, and we've had a lot of learning curves along the way. And one of the things that we learned was, yes, it's important to get the data from the local authority, but it's also important to have the verification from the actual beneficiary themselves. And we then developed a system, which is a WhatsApp bot, where a beneficiary puts in their data, and it's all summarized, and it gives us a database which is verifiable through the physical records.
Are the beneficiaries really aware of this system, that they can use it and access it?
We've put it out there, and it was developed by a certain organization for us, and it's tweaked, and it's working very well. So beneficiaries are actually starting to get used to it. I know technology is a bit of an issue in Zimbabwe, doing everything via WhatsApp or a WhatsApp bot, etc., etc. But I think we're getting there. We are getting there.
Now, your organization is looking at coordinating the floating of infrastructure bonds, that is to raise funds for service provision as well as housing upgrades. How does one qualify for such funds?
Everyone qualifies. The minute you are an informal or irregular, or what has been termed an irregular beneficiary, you automatically qualify if you fall within the Kwangunga Kwame program. So let's say there are 23,000 beneficiaries in a place like Ipworth. We don't select. There's no qualification procedure. Everyone automatically qualifies for a mortgage bond for the infrastructure development.
Even given the fact that most of these people are actually unemployed.
We actually did our market research, and people are unemployed in official terms, but everybody gets money somewhere at the end of the day for food, for transport, etc., etc. So you'll find that there is another economy in these settlements, which is not the formal economy. So we've done our homework, and we've seen that in that other economy, it's actually thriving. People are doing very well, and they are eager to pay. Some of them have even offered to pay the full amount and said that we don't need the 10-year mortgage. So capacity to pay is there.
But then how do they pay? Because most of these individuals, in as much as they are making money and they're earning a buck, they are not bankable. They're not within the banking system. So how does that process work now for them?
They're not within the banking system, but what we've also done is, Kwangu, we've partnered with some small to medium enterprises that operate within these informal settlements, and they are in the business of giving loans, managing money, etc., etc. And they put these people on their database, and then we just collect the money from them. Yes.
Now, let's talk about the formalization of the informal, so to speak.
Yes.
We're talking about ensuring that we have proper infrastructure such as roads and water and whatnot. But then these residents do not hold title deeds. We'll keep going back to that.
Yes.
How can the formalization of title deeds or giving or parceling out title deeds ensure that we are now formalizing or developing our infrastructure in those informal settlements?
So by law, we cannot issue title deeds in an area that is not compliant. So compliance means that roads, water and sewer have to be there. So what we have managed to get granted by the government is an ability to issue the title deed pre-compliance on condition that we actually register a bond for the infrastructure development. So we've sort of circumvented that requirement by promising or saying that we'll do the infrastructure development once a person has their title deed, because we need to raise the money for the infrastructure development.
How has that been going so far?
It's been going very well. It has been going very well, yes.
Which are some of the places that have managed to do that, to actually align with what you're saying?
So, for example, we are in Ipworth and we're in Cowdrey Park. So in Cowdrey Park, you'll find that 94% of the water has already been done by the beneficiaries themselves. They raised the money themselves and paid it to council. And I'm not quite sure of the numbers. You know, council will be better placed to give that information. But the beneficiaries did the water in the whole of Cowdrey Park by themselves by raising the funds for that. So the next point that they're moving to is the roads and the sewer. And that's where we're coming in. We've had many community engagements with them, and they have indicated that they're happy to pay as the records prove that they can pay, and are willing to have that infrastructure in their communities.
Now, given that the beneficiaries are the ones that are making sure they give themselves the proper sewer infrastructure, road infrastructure, water and whatnot, at what point then does the municipality step in?
So the municipality works with the residents, but I think what was lacking before was a proper structured, organization with the money to start with, so that they could just go in, do all the roads, do all the sewer. Because imagine if you're raising these funds from, let's say, 15,000 beneficiaries, and everyone is coming and paying at their own pace, and you're waiting to actually gather that money together to, for example, just do one tarred road or something like that. It takes longer. But if someone comes in with a pot of money and they say, look, we've got 45 million and we'll just do these roads in 6 months or a year, we'll be done with all the infrastructure for your area, and beneficiaries, you can pay over 10 years. It's a much better model for the beneficiaries. There's no pressure. They actually see the process as it's unfolding before them, and they actually, that trust in the program gets built by seeing yellow machines on the ground, infrastructure works beginning, etc., etc.
So now, after all that has been said and done, the municipalities, I'm sure, can now step in and start collecting revenues or taxes. Can they start doing that now?
Yes, municipalities have always collected rates, et cetera, et cetera. So in a way, the very formal structure of Kwangu will actually also assist municipalities because, for example, we have to be very adaptable. In some areas, we can add on long outstanding rates to the mortgage bond, and then we actually then disperse that money to the local authority. So we're flexible. We work with each area depending on their need and their circumstances.
And I'm sure one of the most asked questions are that by formalizing or regularizing these informal settlements, are we not promoting the mushrooming of more informal settlements with the hopes that at some point maybe Kwangu will step in and say, we are now formalizing your settlements?
I think that question is more for government because we get our mandate from government. So in our founding document as a trust, we actually had the areas for us to work in specified, and we know the number of beneficiaries in those areas. So once we've gone into those areas, we work with the data that we get, and anything outside of that, say something that's mushroomed, as you're saying, would be outside of our mandate, and government would then have to make a decision on that.
Now, I want to take you back to what we were talking about earlier, the issue of infrastructure development. Has the infrastructure development seen a creation of a more viable or more safer living condition for the residents that stay in these informal settlements?
It will absolutely 100% do so. And not only that, some of our projects will actually create other forms of income for the beneficiaries. I'll give an example for Epworth. In Epworth, we are doing the septic tanks, the sewer system, etc., etc. And from that, we are going to harvest gas. And our trustees have said that that gas is then something that the community can sell. It's a commodity for the community. So we look at a holistic sort of beneficiation to a community, not just to say we're issuing title deeds or we're building roads or providing water,
Okay. So now some residents of informal settlements have lived for decades without deeds. Let's talk about Epworth, for example. I'm sure some have grown old and they do not have a paper that proves that this is my stand or this is where I actually stay. What impact then would the provision of these title deeds now, as Kwangu, now that you're stepping in, have on encouraging private investment on housing upgrades, and how does this complement state-led infrastructure development?
So in certain areas, in Chitungisa, for example, there are a lot of older people that came into the area maybe 30 years back, 20 years back, and they're very eager. They've got an old people's association which has maybe 10,000 residents registered. So we are there to support them even in getting their paperwork done, in giving them maybe access to certain offices, or just assisting them, to just know what has to be done through other trusts or legal trusts that work in that sort of area of deeds, providing assistance to child-headed households, etc., etc. So there are very many other complex situations, but what we do, we've compartmentalized everything, and we work with the beneficiaries that are mostly have straightforward cases. The ones that need maybe the help of Master of the High Court or whatever, we guide them that way, and then they then proceed to start sorting out their paperwork. And child-headed households also get assistance. So we look at the holistic picture, as I've indicated before.
What kind of support do child-headed households do get now? Just to clarify, and maybe for the benefit of some audiences who are watching and they do have a child-led household.
So for the child-headed households, if it's known that it's a child-headed households, there'll be guidance now for them to get proper legal counsel and to look at the papers that maybe the parents left or, things like that. So they'll get legal counsel and then they'll know how to proceed to get a title deed and who's entitled to that title deed or whose name that title deed should be in. So our mandate is to issue title deeds, but we also try to have that element of social responsibility. And in doing that, we can't be everything. We don't have lawyers in Kwangu, but we can certainly just guide and refer and support those that need legal counsel or those that need other forms of support. And yeah.
Now, I'm not sure if this is under your purview, under your jurisdiction, but let's say in cases where you get to a certain stand and there's a dispute as to who owns it, who came first and who came, are you entitled to fix that and before you issue a title deed, or you leave it up to them to fix it with their lawyers before you then step in?
We actually leave it for them to fix it. Yes.
Well, you are watching The Chase. Today we are talking all things title deeds as well as regularization of informal settlements. You are watching The Chase. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this.
Harare, tune into the beat.
Capitalk 100.4 FM, your source for news, business, sports, fashion, and more.
Experience the pulse of Harare's culture and lifestyle.
Capitalk 100.4 FM, Harare's top radio station.
Join the conversation with Zimbabwe's top personalities.
Subscribe now for fresh and infotainment content daily.
Capital 100.4 FM, Harare's heartbeat.
Didn't graduate? I guess I blew it.
You couldn't advise him anything. He would just look at you and say, so who do you think you are?
We were just like really spoilt.
And then they just give me the receipt and I'd pay.
That guy walks in one day and then he says that he wants to make a movie.
He was blowing the money.
There was just like this habit that he had where as soon as he got money, it was gone.
I just didn't have the skills or the experience.
This money, I could see it disappear so fast.
Welcome back. You are watching The Chase right here on ZTN Prime. Thank you so much for staying with us. Today we are discussing all things title deeds and regularization of informal settlements. And joining me in studio is Marceline, who is the Chief Finance Officer for Congo. Now, we have talked about the issue of service delivery, infrastructure development, and all that, tied up to the issuance of title deeds. How then does that help improve our infrastructure and so forth and so on? Now let's talk about past attempts. There have been past attempts at formalizing or regularizing informal settlements, and some have been criticized for being way too slow. People have to wait for ages until they can get their hands on the title deed. Earlier you were talking about, verification of data, how long that also takes, with the council is in support and all that. But what lessons can be drawn from these past experiences that have been labeled to be too slow to ensure that title deed issuances on the Kwangu side of things is quicker, faster, and not very strenuous for the people that are involved?
Okay. So title deed issuance itself is not a long process. What we've done at the deeds office at the command center is we've actually set up a command center, what we're calling a command center, which is equipped with modern day ICT equipment, and all the examiners actually get to sit in one place, and the issuance of deeds is actually now very quick. It's very fast. Everyone is under one roof. So that in itself is not an issue. We'll find that what has taken time before, I think it was the fact that the systems were more manual. So the issuance would have taken a bit longer. But now that the systems are digital, we obviously are taking much shorter. We can do 1,000 deeds a day, which is it's not a problem for us at all.
So now larger corporations have parceled out stands, given or sold stands to individuals without the proper provision for things like schools, hospitals, clinics, and all that. When the regularization does happen and the people get title deeds, who now bears the brunt of ensuring that these infrastructures are in place, the schools, the clinics, and the infrastructure that is needed to say this is a proper community and everyone can have access to these services?
We work very closely with councils, like I said before, and local authorities. And you are correct in saying that in some of the areas, the schools have been, the places set aside for schools have been allocated to something else, or you'll find that people have built there. But as far as we're concerned as Kwangu, it has not been a problem for us to get those people to move to other stands so that the school can be there, the clinic can be there, whatever else was laid out in the initial plans will end up being there. Some people had actually even built on places that are meant to have roads or drainage systems or et cetera, et cetera. So they get allocated other stands, and then we then just go according to the drawings and the planning of that specific area.
So I'm sure I've noticed that when it comes to informal settlements, they usually grow quite faster than the pace of infrastructure. I'm talking about the roads, like you're saying, the sewer systems and whatnot. The houses tend to come out way much faster than the roads on the infrastructure that we do need. How then does regularization ensure that we are keeping pace, both the growing of the houses, the homes, and the infrastructure on the side, to make sure they keep up and they're paced correctly?
I think that is not an issue per se. There is rapid growth in those areas, but the numbers are finite. So if you do the drawings, for example, you'll find that each stand is mapped out specifically in terms of area, size, etc., and outside of the area that we plan for, no other stand can mushroom. Yeah, that cannot happen.
Now, informal areas have for some time now, and even till now, been dismissed as, well, this is just temporary. They're going to move quite soon. And that has discouraged, private sector players or even government from extending, the services or the help that the people might need in terms of infrastructure development. So do you really think that this regularization will come and speak to say, it's not just temporary, this is a permanent fixture, and you can now also extend your help to the beneficiaries who need it?
Temporary is subjective, hey? Because if someone has been staying somewhere for 10 years, 20 years, you cannot call them temporary. I mean, they're now a permanent feature of that area. So I think we have to also encourage the corporates to change our mindsets to these areas and recognize that these are now actually permanent settlements, and development is now happening in those areas, and it's up to them whether they want to then harness the citizens in that area in terms of access to their services or their businesses, but they're not by any stretch of the imagination to be considered temporary. Yeah, from where I'm sitting, no.
And under which jurisdiction now does this fall under? Who is now responsible to ensure that the convincing happens? Who convinces the private players, the government, other government entities to say, this is an area you should be looking into? Is it now the residents themselves that go with their deeds to say, we have these title deeds, we are permanent here, we've been regularized, or it just happens on its own?
I believe it happens on its own because the nature of business. Business goes where the money is, and in these areas, it's also where the money is. Wherever there's a need, there's business to be. There's money to be made. So any business worth its salt would consider going to an area with a concentration of humanity to sell their services to that concentration of people. So I believe that the business will follow the order. Once there's order, once there's structure, once the beneficiaries themselves can now access private funding to maybe extend their houses and rent out a room or start another vending business, you'll find that they'll become commercial hubs of activity. Yes.
Now let's talk about settlements that are lying between boundaries or that are lying on boundaries. We're talking about urban boundaries that have now blurred the lines really between rural settlements and urban settlements in that regard. How can national regularization then and the title deeds program clarify responsibility for infrastructure development in these grey areas?
So I think that question would really be well answered by, say, the Ministry of Local Government, because they're the ones that would really know, whether someone is urban, peri-urban, rural, etc., or even the municipalities themselves would be able to define an area and say whether it's urban or peri-urban. The ones that are, you're saying, lie along boundaries. It's not really up to us to define. If we're given a certain area and we're given the parameters of that area and the perimeters and the number of stands from a local authority, that is what we work with. That is
Now,
what we work with.
As Kwangu, while we're still on that, the issue of blurring the lines, as Kwangu, do you then say we are prioritizing giving out title deeds to informal settlements that have been developed in rural areas or urban areas, or it's not really a problem for you? It's not your problem. You just have to do what you have to do.
We just do what we're told to do. So we've got our founding document. We came out of a cabinet mandate, a cabinet paper. So we were instructed which areas to start with. And we actually have oversight from the Ministry of Justice. We work with the Ministry of Local Government. We also work with the Ministry of Finance. So we have that oversight. And any areas that are blurry, we bring them up maybe at interministerial task force meetings. And it's then not our problem to solve those issues, but we've handed them over to the correct custodians. Yes.
Now, when we did start, you mentioned two areas, Calgary Park and Epworth. Are they the only ones that are under your purview?
No, there are many others. There's Chitungwiza, there's Southley Park. There's we're going to go into other areas, but I won't go into them right now. But yeah, there's many other areas that we've been mandated to go into.
I don't know if you have the figures. Might you know how many title deeds you've now issued to date? Not the ones that you are yet to issue, but the ones that you can really say, we gave these many people title deeds and they are now regularized and they know they are the owners of this land.
So we've produced a number of title deeds, but the obstacle that we had in producing these deeds was the bond registration. Because as you know, there's a new system at the deeds office, and that system is a digital system. So that system had to go through various approval stages and various testings, etc., which were actually outside the mandate of Kwangu. So we have been, going with that process and allowing the system to be tried, to be tested, and holding on to the deeds before we can actually start issuance. So I think that system was approved probably 3 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. So we're now starting to issue in earnest.
Okay, so
Yes.
now as it stands, you had not really given out the title deeds to the beneficiaries.
No, we hadn't.
But you're now starting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we've come to the end of our program. I'd really like to thank my guest, Marceline Chikasha, Chief Finance Officer of Kwangu. Marceline, it's been a pleasure.
And it's been a pleasure to be here as well.
My name is Faith Nyawadi. You're watching The Chase. Good evening and enjoy the rest of your viewing.